Hello and welcome to Recruiting in Hospitality from caterer.com. I'm Lancelot Narayan, as ever, and in each programme we invite top names from the world of hospitality to discuss matters affecting employers. So recruitment, development, retention, all that really good stuff, the stuff we all live for. Well, you know what I mean, as well as other matters affecting you and your teams. Now, a lot of people I know have, I'd call it irrational fears, but they're irrational because deep down we know it's never going to happen. You know, we're not going to be attacked by vampires. No one's going to come in through the night and stick pins in your feet. Yes, I know someone who's scared of that. There, my irrational fear is being stuck in a wide, huge expanse, a body of water with no land in sight. Now, my guests today are actually choosing to do that. They're going to do that on purpose. Yeah, they're bananas. Would you please say hello to Chris and Robbie? They're doing, I mean, but I must say, they're doing it for a good cause, and we're going to find out all about it today. Guys, say hello.
Hi, my name's Chris Mitchell, and I am the CEO of Genuine Dining.
And I am Robbie Laidlaw. I also work for Genuine Dining as Business Development Director.
Right. I mean, I've got to say, you don't look mental, but you know, I'm sure that we'll you know, it will all come out. Guys, it's lovely to have you on the program. It really is. I'm really happy to have you on today. Let's start really at the beginning. Let's get a bit of background. Tell me about your involvement in hospitality, your backgrounds. What have your career paths been?
Okay, so I'll go first. I was at college studying to be a film editor, and I didn't do that in the end. I got a job at McDonald's in Eastleigh in Hampshire.
Excuse me, sir, why didn't it happen?
Well, because I got this job in hospitality, and I started working at McDonald's while I was at college, and I really enjoyed life in hospitality. And I went from McDonald's and worked at Compass, and then started my own businesses in hospitality. And I guess that culminated in where I am now, which is the CEO of Genuine Dining. And I think you know, I struggle with dyslexia, and I guess school and college, I don't think the schooling process particularly helps people that have dyslexia. It's very academic. And I suppose when I started working at McDonald's, it was the first time that I found something relatively easy. And I just loved it. I loved the fact that I, number one, was earning money. Number two, found it relatively straightforward. It was very logical what I was doing, and latterly, you know, I always love food, which is my biggest problem with this road, to be honest. But yeah, I just loved what I was doing, and I've stayed in hospitality ever since. And I don't think I ever really looked back at that, my fledgling film editing career, for too long. And then 12 years ago, led a management buyout of a company called Yes Dining. And yeah, that's my story really. So we now, our business is split into various different sectors, but the largest part of that business is Genuine Dining, which so we feed people at work, from hospitality in boardrooms down to tea points and coffee shops. We also own a fantastic business called the Admirable Crichton, which does events, and a business that caters into care homes, which is called Signature Dining.
Fabulous. Very busy.
Oh, I've always kept myself busy. I mean, we're even more busy now because we've got this obviously this road to do. So.
Yeah. Robbie, what about you? What's your story?
Well, I started my career in hospitality in Edinburgh. I went to college to do event management and worked for 6 years for myself, doing various roles across the event management sector. Was then given the opportunity to come down to London. I started working for the Springboard charity, and I was there for a couple of years, where I met Chris and Genuine Dining when we were organising a London to Paris bike ride as a fundraiser. And not too long after that was then presented with the opportunity to come work for Genuine Dining, and that was almost 5 years ago now. So I've been down here working at trying to grow the business with Chris and the team here.
Well, it sounds like it's going very well.
It's incredibly enjoyable. Meet some incredibly interesting people, lads.
Yes, I've noticed over the years myself, actually. Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. Well, look, working in the industry, it's got it, like you've said, you've touched on, it's got many plus points, but it can also have its challenges. You're doing this. Well, we're going to get onto the whole story about the road, but the hospitality action. Why is it so important?
Why did I? I mean, I think so. Hospitality Action have always been a charity that we have found have done what they said they will do, and I've got some examples that maybe I'll share in a bit. But I guess yeah, I think working in hospitality does have its challenges. I think that our particular sector is relatively robust, and I guess the main reason that we decided to do this row and support hospitality action was, I mean, the last 3 years haven't been that easy, if I'm honest. I think we, like every other hospitality business, found COVID particularly hard, and it definitely affected, I mean, myself definitely from a mental point of view. I think having built a business for 10 years at the time, to see it decimated in 2 weeks was particularly challenging. And I think that we had a lot of adversity through that period, and that had a very large impact on our workforce. And through COVID, we did everything that we could for our staff, but inevitably we had to make redundancies to our people. And whilst we tried to do everything that we could for our people, Hospitality Action were there to help pick up the pieces and build people back up that had worked in hospitality. So I think that was the reason that's the reason why Hospitality Action. And I think, to be honest, up until that point, certainly my life through hospitality had been really good. I don't think we did have that much challenge. I mean, there was always challenge, but I think COVID was definitely the biggest challenge. And the reason we wanted to do the row was, number one, because it gave us something to focus on that wasn't work, which at the time was easy because there wasn't much going on. Equally, we wanted to give back to a charity that helped us so much. But I think now more than ever, with this cost of living crisis, I actually think that that's affecting our people more than COVID did, because you know, even though we have our workforce are all obviously employed, I think that, you know, it's our baristas and our chefs and our, you know, managers and ops managers and directors that are feeling the pinch from this current cost of living crisis. So I think the reason for choosing hospitality action was because they were so great in what they did. I think now more than ever, it's you know, giving back, and it's something really important. We also knew that we'd have to do something pretty crazy to get people to support our mission. And we've always done, as Robbie said, that when I met Robbie was on a London to Paris bike ride that we were doing for Springboard. And we found it hard to raise money through doing a London to Paris bike ride, because I don't think it encapsulated people's imagination enough. And maybe it's just that our competitors want to see us get eaten by sharks, which you don't do when you're on a London to Paris bike ride. But
No,
yeah,
no, it's true. That's very true. All of these thoughts occurred to me as well as I was prepping for this talk. All right, whose idea was it? Where did the idea actually come from for you two to row the Atlantic?
it comes back to that bike ride again, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, depths of COVID, Chris and I were kind of brainstorming different harebrained ideas of what we could do to give back, like you said, to hospitality action. We wanted to do the bike ride again, to be honest. We wanted to do it slightly different. So set off from London to Paris, but then row the channel. So a completely human-powered journey all the way to Paris. We started looking at the boats that could take us across the channel. It was roughly this time 2 years ago, and we came across some ocean rowing boats and then just stumbled across the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge. And I don't know, something triggered in our brains. I think we both knew that we needed to do something special. Maybe a row across the channel wasn't quite good enough, so we started having a little look into what's entailed about rowing across the channel and across the ocean. And I think the deciding factor was that you asked your wife, Danielle, and Danielle said, yes, absolutely, sounds like a great idea. So by that point on, I don't think there was any going back. We had to do it.
I think she was bored of me whinging about
Yeah, just get out.
yeah,
Get out. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That, well, right. Well, I mean, it can't have been that just straightforward and easy. I mean, you must have looked at each other and thought, are we really going to do this?
This was 3 years. There was 2 years ago, so we had 3 years to the start of the race. And in any
Right.
sort of challenge, we've always done challenges. We've done marathons, we've done ultra bike rides, we've done London to Paris bike rides and things like this. There's always a certain amount of lead time before you actually get to the start line, enough time to kind of compress it within your mind and get yourself set for it.
Yeah.
And we had 3 years to go at when we first signed up, and I think both of us back then probably didn't understand really what it was going to entail, the challenges of it and how difficult it was, not only to cross an ocean but also to get to the start line. How difficult
Right.
it
Yeah.
was to,
Yes. Of course. Jeez.
because there's a large logistical, operational, fundraising side of things that we've got to do before we even get to the start line. So these are all things that we had to do down the line. But I think in the space that we were at that time, in the middle of COVID, we needed something. We needed something to focus on. I think both of our mental health was badly affected during the pandemic. I was myself in a very small flat in Brixton, locked up. I needed to get out and see people come back into the office, and I just needed something to focus on. And I think the role gave me that at that particular time. As we've now progressed through the journey towards the start line, we've got a year to go now, and the last 2 years have absolutely flown by. And with just over a year to go until we leave for the start line, it's all becoming incredibly real. And all those anxieties that we had 2 years ago when we didn't know what our journey was going to look like have all come back again, because all of a sudden the road is on top of us. We're in a much better place in terms of our mental side of things. And from a campaign side of things, we have our boat, our training is well underway. We've got some fantastic sponsors behind it, and we're well on our way to reaching our fundraising total. So a lot of work to do still. But I think with the road just over a year to go and it actually becoming a reality, it's starting to hit home again.
I think it's really easy to sign up. I mean, we signed a form saying that we wanted to do it and gave them a deposit, and then didn't really think that much of it probably for the first year. It's probably in the back of our minds. And then the actual what actually happened was we started getting quite a lot of sponsorship and people supporting us, and then we couldn't really turn around. So we're kind of we're neck deep now. But it you know, I think that we're both really excited about what it can do for the hospitality sector. And I think one of the key things that we want
When you
to
say that, Chris, what do you actually mean?
yeah. Well, I think so. If I go back to, I mentioned that I would say some stuff about hospitality action
Yeah.
and what they've done for our business. So the first interaction I had, or the business had, with hospitality action was when the terror attacks happened in London Bridge. And at the time, we had a sushi restaurant called Feng Sushi in Stony Street. And our team were working in the evening, and they had these big concertina doors at the front of the restaurant that were open, and they heard some commotion. Luckily, one of the chefs was upstairs and heard it, and he was Steve-O was his name, and he was quite he was quite a nosy guy. Went outside to see what was going on, and saw this terrorist running towards the restaurant and literally managed to close the door at the point that this terrorist was trying to get into the restaurant and locked it. And the staff were obviously incredibly shaken up by this this event that had happened. So we contacted Hospitality Action, or Candy, our head of people, contacted Hospitality Action, and within the next day, there was a team of counsellors coming in, talking to our guys, and I think it was that from that moment on, I just thought what an amazing job they did at doing what they said they would do, which is help people that, you know, fall on hard times that work in the hospitality industry. So I guess that was the first activity that we had done with them, and they were just brilliant. And then through COVID, after that, we signed up to their employee assistance scheme, and it's helped countless people since then. COVID was a really good example of that, where, you know, they were able to give grants out to our people, and they have I mean, they just do such a great job. And now more than ever with this cost of living crisis, so this autumn they've experienced a 30% increase in applications already, and I think that that's only going to get worse. And their applications for financial support, and 50% of those applicants can't keep up with household utility bills or paying rent. And obviously the obvious conclusion to that is that they become, you know, there's a real risk that they become homeless. And on top of that, 35% of those beneficiaries are referencing mental health issues as well. So I think, you know, they need support more than ever. And I think the timing, we did it through COVID because they helped a lot of our people, and it just so happens that our row is December 23. And I think probably this year more than others, Hospitality Action are going to be needed even more. So I guess that's why Hospitality Action. I think, you know, they just need support.
Right. That is I mean, there's no better reason to get involved than you've just said, Chris. That's a brilliant way of telling people what needs to be done. What are the benefits for sponsors coming on board to help you?
I mean, the obvious one is that, you know, the £250,000 that we want to raise is going to go directly back to the charity. So the main purpose is, you know, by pledging to sponsor our row, that money goes back to the charity. So that's number one. Robbie's probably got a bit more. You did some.
Yeah. I think we both work in food service, but this row isn't about food service, it's about Hospitality Action, and they work across all sectors: restaurants, bars, equipment providers, hotels. And our campaign is really geared towards reaching out to all of these different businesses. We've had some fantastic sponsors on board already, from equipment providers, school caterers, and all sorts. And we are reaching out to the whole industry to raise awareness of what we're doing and raise awareness about Hospitality Action. I think from a sponsor's perspective, it's a fantastic story to go to their stakeholders with. It's something different. It's something really interesting that they can get behind, and something interesting that we have found that sponsors, when they have gone out to their stakeholders, whatever it might be a monthly newsletter, it might be an AGM, whatever it might be, we've decided to help sponsor Sprit of Hospitality to raise money for Hospitality Action. It's a brilliant story, really interesting, and it's got them a lot of traction with the stakeholders that they're engaging with. So the engagement side of things is incredibly interesting for them to look at. So it's a bit of a two-way thing. We want to obviously raise as much money as possible, but we want to reach as many people as possible as well. And sponsorship doesn't necessarily have to just mean a donation of funds. It can also be a donation of a hotel stay or an experience, or something that we can auction off at one of the many events.
We're going to say that we could use after.
Yeah.
Definitely, you're gonna need it. So, what kind of sponsorship packages are there available? Because people are going to want to get involved after listening to this. What can they do?
So we have a sponsorship brochure that we are quite happy to share. It's broken up into different levels of sponsorship, from entry sponsorship all the way up to a platinum sponsorship. The different levels get different things: sizes of logo on the boat, branding on our materials, shout outs when we're on the ocean across social media, appearances at events. We're just trying to set up an appearance at a school with one of our sponsors so we can talk to the kids about mental health challenges, about nutrition. The sponsorship brochure is a guideline. I think what Chris and I are willing to do and are keen to do to push forward is to do something different and to get involved in doing something that's specific to that business. So if they have a particular audience that they want to reach, we're more than happy to do things like this. We're more than happy to come in person to speak at events, to bring the boat with us as well, and to tell the story about Hospitality Action, the people that they help, and why the sponsorship side of things is so important, and kind of push the story out that way. So there are different sponsorship packages available, to answer your question. But I think what we're willing to do, because our industry is so broad with so many different sectors within it, and different things are going to affect people different ways, we're more than happy to kind of push whatever they decide to go forward with different ideas.
Plus, who wouldn't want to pay to see us suffer? That has to be the ultimate prize, is that you'll get to see us suffer with your logo. And I think when we first saw the boat and the boat that we were going to buy, I think we just thought it'd be great to have as many of our competitors' logos on it as possible. And you know, Genuine Dining's kind of got this bright pink kind of colour scheme, and it's quite distinctive. You know, we went as far away from that as possible.
Right.
It's not about Genuine Dining. This is about hospitality people, and the hospitality industry at large. And I think it was always something that we really wanted to make sure it wasn't Genuine Dining getting the promotion. It was very much around, you know, Hospitality Action. This is why we're doing it. And Mark and his team have been fantastic in, you know, helping us approach people. And I think the other thing that we really want is we've managed to secure some really high profile chefs as well to produce us food while we're out there.
Like names,
so we've got,
please.
well, I'll do a couple of name drops. I mean, we've got Tom Kerridge, which is
Who?
our yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's based in Marlow. Or no, obviously everyone knows Tom Kerridge. And Dan Howe's our exec chef. So there you go.
Right.
Too. The others haven't been announced yet, so we can't tell you.
Right.
But I think from, you know, the idea of that is, again, to raise the profile of the row. So I think Tom Kerridge is doing our Christmas lunch for us, which will be interesting because he needs to make it so that it can be dehydrated and rehydrated with boiling water.
Like space food.
Sorry?
Like space food.
It is a bit like space food, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how it goes, because the current food is questionable, to say the least. I mean, it's not the most amazing. It's either really spicy or really crunchy.
Right.
And it's very heavy, very calorie rich, lots of fat. So it's quite hard to eat. But yeah, so that's great. And then obviously the idea is that on Christmas Day, when we're tucking into Chef Tom's fantastic food, we'll obviously be sending back updates on it and telling the story. And I think that, you know, that's going to be interesting for people to watch our journey. Less interesting for us, to be fair, because I've got to spend a long time with a Scotsman.
Right. And listen. I live half the time in Scotland. I know exactly what it's like. It's no. To quote Spinal Tap, can I raise a practical question at this point?
Yeah.
How much rowing have you two actually done, you know, in real life?
Well, a lot more than we had 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So you've been. How often do you train?
Well, it all really depends. It's so difficult to answer that question concisely because it's all very weather dependent. So if you can imagine, to train for this, the best form of training is obviously getting out on the boat, our boat Maria. That we do go out on the Solent whenever we can. It's very weather dependent. When we're doing coastal roads, the wind is the main thing that we look at. We don't obviously want to be blown into any rocks, so we need to have a window of of low wind where we can get the boat out, and then we have to look at things like tides and time in which we actually launch the boat, so that everything is kind of is fitting into that weather window. And
Right.
of course, Chris and I work full time, so we really only have the weekends to go out and do this. So in terms of training on the boat, we're limited to those two factors. When we get out on the ocean, obviously that goes completely out the window. We've never done a whole week's row, for example. On the ocean, we'll be rowing in 2-hour stints, 2 hours on and 2 hours off for 24 hours a day, which we can't really replicate when we're down on the coast, because
No.
we've got other things to contend with, such as tide and wind. So training becomes a bit difficult. So as soon as we leave La Gomera, and we leave on the 12th of December,
23, yeah.
2023, so next December, as soon as we leave La Gomera, we can't turn around. You can't roll back into the wind. That time of year, the wind will be blowing from east to west, so it will be supporting us as we're going across. We have to be as ready as we possibly can be by that moment, because if we step onto Maria and we set off from La Gomera, and all of a sudden that we decide 100 miles in that it's not for us, there's no turning back. And I was told the other day that the helicopter, to be rescued by a helicopter, you have to be within 200 miles of the coast. Helicopters have a 400-mile range on them, so we've got 200 miles to cover before we're out of reach of any rescue services, which is quite a daunting thought, to be honest, because that's only 2 days in. Should theoretically be only 2 days in, so there's a very short amount of time on the boat until we're out of reach of land. So training for that you can't do. The mental side of things, I think, is going to be more difficult to comprehend when we're on the ocean than any of the physical side of things. Chris and I are working with a guy called Gus Barton, who's our ocean rowing coach. He's put a program for us together that we're following at the moment, and that's all about resilience, more about strength and endurance. It's about hardening your hands up. It's about making sure your grip strength is really strong. There's no mental training for that, and I think that's what is going to be the hardest thing to actually prepare for.
I think the biggest thing is that 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day till you get there. I think that's probably the bit that's most questionable for me.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Why is it questionable?
Well, it's just going to be blooming hard, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. Okay, yeah.
And the other
yes,
thing that we've realised is neither of us like rowing. So we find that rowing it's such a. I mean, we're training 6 days a week at the moment, which tends to be really early in the morning, getting on a rowing machine or doing weights. And there's nothing more boring than a rowing machine. I mean, it is dull. So we're doing, 2 hours on a rowing machine, and it's just really boring. And it's funny because when we have to tow the boat to Lymington where we launch it, and I'm really excited about getting out on the water with Maria. And you're an hour in, you're like, this is really dull. So I don't know what it's going to be like. Hopefully 40 days, could be longer on a boat. I mean, I feel like we should have done a long bike ride or something to be much more interesting.
Yeah.
But we had a road, so we signed up. We had a road. I may have rowed a sort of rowing boat on a boating lake or something, but we learnt to row at Fulham Reach Rowing Club on fine boats so 2 years ago. And that was an adventure as well, because we had been doing a lot of sort of rowing machine work, and I think we both fancied ourselves as pretty good, to be fair. Like, we're like, yeah, we're gonna get on this boat and they're gonna be really amazed at how we do. And we got on this fine boat, me and Robbie, feeling great, and then basically nearly fell in.
Right.
We were hitting each other's oars all the time. And we actually said to the coach, the guy that was training us, said, how do you think we did? And he literally took a sharp intake of breath and sort of said, well, not as good as others, to be fair.
Yeah.
So we went and had a beer afterwards. We were like, gee, this is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
But we can now row. So we've done a lot of rowing. I think we're probably pretty proficient at rowing now. Yeah, but it's definitely a challenge mentally. This would be much harder than physically.
So we've had our boat for a little over a year now. So we've had quite a lot of experience of taking her out, and we managed to clock up 100 hours of rowing, which
Wow.
sounds like a lot. But I listened to one of the calls from the safety team. The minimum amount of rowing that we have to do before we get to the start line is 120 hours. So we're almost there. But he said, if you translate that into what that means about being on the ocean, it's like running a marathon and training for 5 minutes. It's like going for a 5-minute jog before setting off to do a marathon.
Yeah.
And it kind of does dawn on you that you can be as prepared as you possibly can be. You can do as many hours as possible on your erg at home or in the ocean, and all of a sudden you're out in this ginormous expanse of water and nothing really can prepare you for that. So the training is going well. We've got our boat and we've been taking her out, and we've become a lot more proficient in how things work on board, how to use the satellite navigation systems, how to use the auto tiller, how to switch positions quickly and be safe on the boat, how to cook meals safely on the boat. So there's a lot of other sort of training that goes on ahead of just.
I mean, you say that, but the last time you tried to cook on board was a disaster.
Yeah.
I think you could. We took a guy that's doing it the same year as us. He was a solo rower, a guy called Elliot, who actually weirdly works in the wine trade. So Robbie cooked 3 meals and spilt 3 meals all over the boat. So I think there's a little. To be fair, I think you say that we've got used to it. I think there's probably a bit of work to do on that.
There's more work to do. You've got another year.
Exactly.
I mean, it will be on top of you before you know it, but you've still got another year. If people want to get involved, because they're going to want to, where do they go to? How do they do it?
They can go to either one of 2 places. We have a brilliant website, spiritofhospitality.co.uk. On that website, there's a great video on the front page that gives a good indication of what the row is going to be like, some of the conditions that we'll have on board, also some of the media channels that the row will be presented across. There's also a sponsorship page on that website where they can download the sponsorship brochure, and then a contact us page where Chris and I's details are on there. We also have an Instagram page, which is Spirit of Hospitality with underscores between each word.
So at Spirit of hospitality.
That's the one. That's where you get to see all the videos of Robbie making a mess all
Spilling
over the boat
dinner
with his food. Yeah.
Spilling dinners, yeah.
And
Brilliant.
us trying to learn how to use a boat. I mean, I guess Instagram is our main medium to get out to people, but the website's got all the sponsorship details on that people can download.
Can we follow your progress during the course of the year? Would you come back on the program?
Yeah.
And we can catch up with you and how you're doing in the run up to the race?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to.
Brilliant. Yeah. I'd love to have you back. Listen, I've spoken to you for more than half an hour now. I still think you're bonkers, but I wish you all the very, very best. I'm 100% behind you. And I'm sure everyone listening to this will be too. So thanks, guys. Thanks so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
Thanks, lads. Appreciate
Brilliant.
it.
I hope you enjoyed the program today. If you haven't subscribed to Recruiting in Hospitality, why not? Just go to Podbean or wherever you get your podcast, just go there and subscribe, because you'll be the first to get new episodes as they come out. You can follow us on our social channels, on Twitter at caterer.com, which is caterer, DOTCOM. Likewise on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Follow us on LinkedIn as well. We'll see you again next time on Recruiting in Hospitality from caterer.com. I've been Lancelot Narayan, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.